Hello, and welcome to Crosswords, the show where I MC rap battles between different cast members of RuPaul's Drag Race. My name is Will, and I'm a songwriter. This is a short series in the D&D Bard class and a fun way to play one. Today we're going to cover guidelines and when to ignore them. Let's start with my least favorite topic, when to not rhyme. I know, it's horrible, but we gotta talk about it, because hopefully it will be useful to you. Let's get this over with. When I introduced this idea, I told you that the core of role-playing a bard in this way is replacing words in popular songs with words that are relevant to the game. Up to this point, we've focused on rhymes and ways to trick your brain into thinking a word is a rhyme. But when can we get away with no rhyme at all? The simplest solution is to change out words in the middle of a phrase. Since the rhyme won't happen until later, you basically get a free pass as long as you try and match the syllables up correctly. We'll talk more about this later, but for now, choose key phrases in the song to swap out. This will help add ridiculousness to your song of inspiration, which is always a plus. The juxtaposition of the original lyrics and whatever's happening at the table is where you'll find your joke. This is how you get songs like Claro to Healing. Try and only change as few words as possible. The more words you swap out, the more you risk losing the original song entirely. This is just as bad as covering a song that no one else at the table knows. Sure, you still get the joke, but the point is to make your friends laugh, right? Let them in on the joke. Choose one or two key phrases in the phrase and change them out. Make sure that there are still enough words from the original song that can clue you into the original track. Remember that rhythm is just as important as rhyme in a song. The syncopation and stresses you place on words and syllables in a phrase, also known as patter, is just as important to maintaining the heart of the song that you're covering. If you can maintain that original patter, you may even be able to get away with not rhyming at all, even with words at the end of a line. Now, from a songwriting perspective, if you're going to ignore one end-line rhyme, you may be better off ignoring all of them. This leads to a more free-form, stream-of-consciousness style of songwriting. Be careful. This is a risky maneuver, and it shouldn't be overused. A slightly less risky rule to ignore is syllable matching. You can stretch or condense words as you sing them, making them shorter or longer to match the syllables of the original. You'll often see this in traditional church music. Hymn writers would take already written melodies and write religious words to match. This is how you get words like or taking the place of over, or ne'er taking the place of never. They needed to squeeze those two-syllable words into just one syllable. Now we can do this too. After all, it's sanctioned by God. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you can stretch words to fill more syllables than they actually take up. Stretch the vowels out over multiple syllables and you should be fine. Here's an example that mostly rhymes, but pay attention to when I stop rhyming. It's you, babe, and I'm a sucker for the way that you use rage. And they can try and run, but it would be useless. You're the barbarian, and I know that they will never ever be the same. So yeah, lots of rhymes there. Sue me. But notice the way that I shoved the word barbarian in there. The original line is, you're to blame, just wanted of you. However, the stresses and accents on the word barbarian kind of fit the flow of that line fairly well. I actually stretched out the N consonant here because of how close the word and is to the word barbarian, but you'll probably have more success with vowels overall. Now let's say you're really at a loss. You're all out of the material you prepared, but you've got a whole new fight, and it's going down tonight, not next week like everyone planned. Sure, you can try and use other people's turns to try and write out some new ideas, but you need to strategize too. Is there something you can do in a pinch? Well, it's time to finally talk about one of my favorite people in the world, the patron saint of bards, Weird Al Yankovic. Not only is Weird Al one of the most accomplished and consistent parodists of all time, he also frequently writes brilliant style parodies of artists and genres. One of my favorite style parody that he does is called Everything You Know Is Wrong, off the Bad Hair Day album. This isn't like Weird Al's most famous songs, where he takes a popular song and changes the lyrics a bit to something funny and clever. Instead, he looks at an entire artist's discography and writes a new song in the style of that artist or genre. In this case, Weird Al does a brilliant take on They Might Be Giants, poking fun at their absurdist songwriting style and hyperactive narrator. It's a joke written exclusively for those who like both Weird Al and They Might Be Giants, but it's executed to perfection. So what can we learn from this? Well, you don't have to actually parody someone else's song at all. Popular bands and singers often have distinct styles and characteristics that are easy to emulate and poke fun at. You can even borrow the theme from one of their more popular songs to build yourself a groundwork for your entirely new song. This is a good chance to practice vocal techniques. Try playing with how you place your voice in your mouth. Higher up the palate and you get a more nasal sound like a punk rock singer. Farther back down the throat and you get a deeper bass. Play with vibrato and accents if you really want to get into the voice of your artist. Each person has a particular way of phrasing their words. This is a good way to let your fellow players know who you're parodying, as well as make fun of the artist you're ripping off. DMX emphasizes random syllables. Bob Dylan sounds like he's making fun of you. And Sam Riegel rolls his dice like this. This episode of Crosswords is brought to you by my Patreon account, which is in a link in the description and helps me pretend I'm a real musician. It's also brought to you by Nerdsmith, a collaborative network delivering nerdy entertainment, aka an excuse to plug our friend's show. This week, the friend I'm plugging is Heather and her podcast, Geek Thyself. Geek Thyself is a show for those that love to learn about various topics but do not have the time to research all the different questions that they would like to learn more about. Heather researches and discusses a new topic for 30 minutes each week, with topics ranging from science, history, and medicine to gaming, literature, and cats. Heather, I'd like to submit a topic for you to research for your next podcast. I've researched it extensively. Here's my abstract. Batman has superpowers. They are as follows: dead parents and lots of money. According to Google, the definition of power is as follows: the ability to do something or act in a particular way. The definition of super is to a great or extreme degree. Now, by those definitions, Batman has an extreme ability to spend money, as well as an overabundance of dead parents. This is an argument I've been having with my friend for at least 6 years. Heather, please put an end to this discussion once and for all. I will accept confirmation of my theorem via Twitter, since I know you have an actual podcast to do.